Peter's not finished yet with his description of people who would undermine the faith of God's people and who are busy promoting themselves and their covetous lifestyle. So today we'll read more of this from 2 Peter chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 17 to 19. These are wells without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of darkness is reserved forever. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lusts of the flesh, through much wantonness, those that were clean escaped from them who live in error. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption. For of whom a man is overcome, of the same is he brought in bondage. Whenever we were children, one of the things that was available in Binny's sweet shop, Binny's was the name of the sweet shop, it was what was called a lucky bag, and it was just a collection of goodies in a sealed bag where you couldn't see what you were buying until after you'd parted with your money. Now, my parents drilled into us that there was no such thing as luck, so it wasn't something that we invested a lot of money in. But I do know that on the one or two occasions when I bought one, it actually proved to be a great disappointment. In the ancient world, one of the most disappointing experiences for a traveller on a long and dry journey must have been to come to springs that had dried up. So Peter describes in these verses people who are wells without water, verse 17. As it is with so much that is false, it is promise without product. In the following verse, Peter describes what these people promote as great swelling words of vanity. That's verse 18. They are full of emptiness. Indeed, sometimes we would describe such a person as a windbag, full of air, but nothing of substance to them. Now, a lesson that we as God's people need to have reinforced in our minds time and time again is that there is no fulfillment for the Christian outside of Christ. As the psalmist wrote in Psalm 87 verse 7, all my springs are in thee. And of course there is a hymn that we sing which puts it a little bit like this: I tried the broken cisterns, Lord, but their waters failed. E'en as I stooped to drink, they fled and mocked me as I wailed. And then the chorus says, now none but Christ can satisfy, none other name for me. There's love and life and lasting joy, Lord Jesus, found in thee. It is easy to be distracted because the world that we live in is full of deception. The Lord Jesus spoke in Matthew chapter 13 about the deceitfulness of riches. And then in Hebrews chapter 3 we read about the deceitfulness of sin. In fact, earlier in chapter 2 here in verse 13, Peter wrote about their own deceivings. And we know that at the very beginning, 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 3 tells us, the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety. As Peter writes here, they promise them liberty, verse 19, but they actually bring them into bondage. As believers, we need to be wary of the world in all its forms: religious, political, educational, commercial, leisure and entertainment, lest we think that is where we might find fulfillment. Now, while Peter's warnings are principally related to wrong doctrine and the wrong practice that comes out of it, we also need to realize that all these worldly things can overcome us and bring us into bondage, as Peter describes it here. So our motto should be what Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 12. I will not be brought under the power of any of those things. So by God's grace, may that be true of us as Christians.